I wanted to take a brief break from the unfolding crisis in the church to talk about the continued insanity in the media and culture that has become the norm. The latest iteration of this insanity is, of course, the unhinged media's response to quite possibly the most moral statement made by the President of the United States in the past year. President Trump tweeted his support of the white farmers in South Africa, which brought attention to a human rights crisis that has been, until now, buried by the media. The media response has been to come unglued, calling the issue a dog whistle to white nationalists. Well, I am not a white nationalist, nor am I on the alt-right, but I do care about this issue because it is one of basic human decency. If you're not familiar with the issue, here's a brief summary from an alt-right channel called Vertigo Politics. Again, I'm not on the alt-right. I just think that this is the best quick summary of the issue of South Africa out there right now. It's about 2 minutes in length.
In 1961, South Africa finally became a free republic and the jewel and envy of Africa under Dutch control, until Western power brokers and globalists handed it over to Marxist revolutionaries in 1994. Now, after 24 years of incompetence, gross corruption, and black-style communist thuggery, where 60,000 white Afrikaners have been butchered with machetes, just last month, the black majority South African Parliament voted overwhelmingly for the confiscation of white land without compensation. The motion was brought by radical racialist Julius Idi Amin Malema of the Marxist EFF, who has threatened to cut the throat of whites, among other things. Afrikaners, already under siege in a deteriorating, dangerous country, are staring down the barrel of a massive, legally sanctioned theft which could set off a greater conflict. The obvious comparison is to Zimbabwe, where Robert Mugabe undertook a similar effort. Productive white farms were expropriated and given to blacks who didn't know how to run them. Whites fled, the economy tanked, the currency hyperinflated, and the breadbasket of Africa became one of Africa's worst basket cases. Mr. Mugabe is out of power thanks to a recent coup, but the country may never recover. Rather than serving as an example of black self-sufficiency, Zimbabwe today is dependent on China and has already become a de facto colony. Yet Zimbabwe, with a population around 16 million, is small enough to be kept on life support by injections of food aid and foreign currency. South Africa, with 60 million people, is a different story. If the whites go, there will be no one capable of feeding the hungry multitudes. South Africa already faces massive power outages, collapsing infrastructure, and now a severe water shortage, with Cape Town poised to run out of water next month. All of this is due to 2 decades of destructive decisions by an incompetent looter government. Indeed, the white farmers are already going. Farm murders, a fact of life since de Klerk and his jelly-spine negotiators awarded power to Nelson Mandela's racial Marxists, are driving out the Boers. The murder rate for white farmers is higher than for any other segment of the population. Many whites who can leave have already done so.
For a fuller treatment, I recommend watching Lauren Southern's documentary Farmlands, which has really helped bring attention to this issue. A link to that documentary is in the description below. For my purposes, I am more interested in the media reaction, which can be seen in clips like the following.
So, Deborah, take us through the fact and the fiction of President Trump's tweet and the reporting that he's citing from Fox News on these farmland seizures and the large-scale killing of farmers, and specifically the president in his tweet mentioned white farmers.
Well, that's where we get into a mess regarding the story. First of all, President Trump has conflated 2 issues, the one being land seizures and the other being the killing of so-called white farmers in South Africa. Land seizures have not begun in South Africa. As I mentioned, this is an issue that Cyril Ramaphosa has to take to Parliament. He needs a 2/3 majority to change the Constitution. The ANC does not have a 2/3 majority in South Africa. It would need the support of another party, and even if it were to happen, it would probably go through a series of legal challenges and finally end up in the Constitutional Court. So that cannot happen for some time to come. The president based his tweet on a report on Fox News by Tucker Carlson, who said that the land seizures has begun. As I said, that has not happened. He also said that there was large-scale killing of white farmers. It's referred to by white right-wing organizations in South Africa as the white genocide. But the facts simply do not bear this out. In fact, the killing of farmers in South Africa has decreased since its peak, which was probably in 1998. I think in the last year it was just about 40 farmers that were killed. And when they refer to farm killings, it covers everybody on a farm. White farmers, black farm workers, domestic abuse. There's no sort of differentiation there. But this is not an issue where white farmers are being targeted because of their race, because criminals want to steal their land. It is part of a problem in South Africa, which does have a high crime rate. So to actually conflate it, A, with land seizures, it has nothing to do, and B, as an issue against white South Africans, is simply and blatantly untrue. And I think that is what a lot of people are objecting to, that first of all, this Fox News report has come out with something which actually, if a report like that was done by a local broadcaster in South Africa, could well be taken before the Broadcast Complaints Commission because it is factually not true. And then secondly, the president's tweet, which repeated the misinformation and then conflated two issues which had absolutely nothing to do with each other and in the statistics. The statistics do not bear out this issue that white farmers are deliberately being targeted because of their race. This is a narrative being perpetuated by white right-wing organizations in South Africa.
That is an astonishing piece of propaganda. The facts are pretty straightforward. Farmers in South Africa have been targeted because of racial animus and a Marxist ideological drive to reappropriate land from perceived oppressors to the oppressed. The response from Western governments, virtually all leftist, has been almost pure silence, with a single attempt made by Australia to issue humanitarian visas to farmers, which was then shut down by other leftists. The following are comments made on various social media platforms by black nationalists. I won't read these out loud because they are vile and would probably violate YouTube's terms of service, so they'll be on the screen.
There is a cancer, an evil tumor, growing, spreading in our midst. Shout! Shout! Shout out his name!
Nothing the party does is good. Even the war itself is good. The party wants you to believe we are at war, so as to channel your emotions away from their rightful function.
The response from the activist left is revealing. This headline from leftist propaganda outlet Vox is a great example of the response from the left. Trump's tweet echoing white nationalist propaganda about South African farmers explained, "There's no evidence of a genocidal campaign against white farmers." Technically true. There is no organized genocidal campaign against whites. Yet. And I say yet because South African leaders say that they have not made a call to kill white farmers. Yet. Their words, not mine. The following is a quote from Julius Malema. He is a South African leader of parliament and the head of the Economic Freedom Fighters, a far-left South African political party. He founded that party in 2013. The following comes from the Huffington Post. Malema, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. He cannot guarantee what will happen in the future, the EFF leader said in a recent interview. The reaction to Trump's tweet is interesting to say the least. There is an undertone to this that reflects a broader attitude in the left, that white people are evil. This should be deeply disturbing to anyone with a functioning brain and a moral compass, but it isn't to a lot of people. Why is that? Because there has been a focused campaign in the US and Europe to make us feel shame for our pasts through presenting history through a distorted lens. That distorted lens is an ideological approach to any form of study called critical theory. From this, you get critical race theory, critical history, critical theology, and supposed reforms of literature studies and the like. You can probably tell that the epicenter of this madness are the universities in the West, and Hollywood is their mouthpiece in the broader culture. One result of this is a fomenting of racial animus in Western countries, while simultaneously promoting forced diversity and forced immigration of peoples from vastly different cultures that frankly are incompatible with Western culture, while also simultaneously rejecting the notion of assimilation. It's a witch's brew that will one day turn into violence. South Africa may not be the template for violence, at least not yet, but it is a vision of things to come. And why is that? Cultural Marxism is the ideological framework of critical theory. Critical theory says that all ideas must be re-examined because of their origins in supporting the power structure of the oppressors. It's classic Foucault. Cultural Marxism is the reimagining of Marxist class struggles along racial and sexual lines, with economic classes being replaced by identitarian ones. And white Christian men are always the bad guys, which has led to a satanic idea that I've seen some Christians buy into, the new definition of racism, which I'll let Francesca Ramsey of the Racist MTV show Decoded explain to you.
We're going to talk about racism.
Well, the dictionary defines racism as the hatred or intolerance of another race or races.
Well, yes, but racism's a little more complicated than that. The dictionary offers a very simple explanation, because it's just the dictionary. If you want to understand racism, you need to talk sociology, and sociology explains racism as a combination of prejudice and power.
Well, isn't that just convenient? Let's just ignore what the dictionary says.
No, we're not ignoring the dictionary, just going a little deeper. Think of it this way. If your car breaks down, you don't look up car in the dictionary to try and fix it, you go to a mechanic. So when it comes to getting the nitty-gritty of understanding how racism works, I say we should probably defer to sociologists, because you know, they study how people, organizations, and institutions work. It's kind of their jobs.
My apologies for that clip. It was very cringe-inducing. Aside from the idiocy of relying on sociologists for expertise on anything, this definition is extremely dangerous. It feeds into increasing social divisions, foments violence, and enables new levels of institutionalized hate here in the US and in the West. In general, what we are seeing across the board is a new politics of race, and you can see its tentacles everywhere, from the constant claims that the president is a racist with little evidence, or claims that if you are white and have children, then you are engaging in white supremacy, to people cheering the idea that an entire race of people will be extinct in 100 years, again, white people, and yes, people have said that. It becomes evident that the left in the West is so drenched in racism that they promote a new definition of racism to enable their racist activities. Prejudice plus power as a definition is dangerous because it enables people to engage in open hate and racism against people of European descent because they somehow are privileged and have institutional power. It's stupid, it's dangerous, and it's frankly demonic. A great example of this is the reaction people are having to the murder of white South African farmers. Again, I won't read these tweets out loud because they'd probably get my channel flagged by the Google algorithm. Most of these have been collected by the Twitter account Blue Check Watch, and it's worth following. Instead of reading these, they'll appear on your screen. So why is the left redefining racism? Put most simply, Marxism is an inherently tyrannical ideology. All tyrannical systems throughout history needed an outsider group to function. In a multi-culti world, white Christian men are the outsider group when the neo-Marxists are building a political base with the people they've convinced are oppressed or have guilt-tripped into being remorseful about phantom oppression. In the context of South Africa, with its history of apartheid and the greatest evil ever committed, colonialism, it becomes easy to dismiss those victims of brutality as receiving injustice. Oppression in all of its phantom forms is the original sin in the religion of cultural Marxism. It enables great evil and convinces people who are otherwise good to dehumanize those they disagree with and turns otherwise good people into tools of oppression, terrorism, and violence. In other words, decent people become useful idiots of the cultural Marxists, and those useful idiots will make excuses for heinous evils, like the rape, murder, and torture of innocent men, women, and children in South Africa for the crime of being the white descendants of colonizers. It's an evil ideology, and I know far, far too many Catholics who buy into it. Thanks for listening. In this time of crisis, it is important for all faithful Catholics to adhere to the traditions of the Church, and in accordance with Canon 212 of the Code of Canon Law, to speak out against heretical members of the hierarchy. Subscribe to this channel and join me in this fight to preserve the faith. Ave Maria.